And we'll go ahead and call the meeting of the Economic Improvement Corporation of the City of Kerrville, Texas to order. I've asked Greg Richards to lead us in our invocation. Greg?
Bow your heads with me. Lord, thank you for the community that we live in. Help us to be good stewards of our time today and of all that you've put in our hands, from our families to our friends to our jobs to the resources that we get to enjoy. Lord, you offer wisdom freely to those who ask for it. We need it. We're asking for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Greg. All right, item number 1 on the agenda is the Visitor Citizens Forum. Any citizen with business not scheduled on the agenda may speak to the Economic Improvement Corporation. No deliberation or action can be taken on these items because the Open Meetings Act requires an item be posted on an agenda 72 hours before the meeting. Visitors are asked to limit their presentations to 3 minutes. I don't have any visitors' cards, so shall I assume that we do not have any visitors that want to speak at this time? All right. Move on to item number 2, which is approval of the meeting of EIC held August 19th, 2019. Those were included in your package. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the item? Any changes made to it? I hear none. All those in favor of approval of the minutes as written, raise your right hand. And that is approved unanimously. Moving on to item number 3, which are our monthly reports. Monthly financials for August of 2019. Ms. Dozier, welcome.
Good afternoon. I'd like to begin with a little bit of an update related to debt before we get into the monthly financial package. So as you know, EIC pays the debt service on 3 of the debt issuances that the city has, and those relate to River Trail and the Kerrville Sports Complex. So we have one of those series. It's called the 2011A series. It was issued in 2011. It was issued for River Trail at $3.5 million. Current balance on it's $2.6 million. And it has a provision in it where it's callable. So you're probably familiar with what that means, but I'll give just a little bit of background. So basically, if it's callable, that means that it's eligible to be refinanced. And so this bond is eligible to be refinanced in February of 2020. And the bond has pretty good interest rates. It was issued at very low rates. The coupon varies depending on the year, but like between 2 and 3.5% on the coupon rate. So we've been in an environment where it wouldn't make sense to do a refinancing or a refunding with this because rates would be higher if we were to refinance it. But given the current interest rate environment in the past month, and then a potential cut on Wednesday at the Federal Reserve meeting, it looks like that interest rates may be low enough to where it's going to actually benefit us to look into refunding that bond and refinancing it basically at a lower rate. So what we're going to do is take a presentation to council on October 8th. And we'll go through with council what the potential benefits of the refunding would be. And, we have to estimate like what interest rate we think we could get. But it looks like we may have a savings of like something like $100,000 over the remaining life of the loan, which goes through 2031. So it's not huge dollars, but $100,000 is $100,000. And that's even after taking out the costs that we'd incur for doing the refinancing. So if council wants to move forward, then they would take action on October 22nd to move forward with that. So I just wanted to give y'all a heads up. So it could be good news for EIC if all of this goes through, if rates stay low. We could end up refinancing that one, and then EIC's portion of the debt service would go down a little bit. So any questions on that? Okay. Moving on to the monthly financials. If you will turn to the cash flow forecast that's in your packet. So we're going to start with looking at the column on the left-hand side that says August 2019 and go through just what our activity was for the month of August. So for the month of August, we received revenue of $339,000, almost $340,000. Most of that was sales tax revenue. Our sales tax revenue was up 2.7% compared to August of 2018. We actually saw a slight decrease in our retail sector of sales tax, which is a little concerning because that's our biggest one, but it was just a 1 month thing. So, sales tax can be volatile from month to month, but construction and manufacturing more than made up for that decrease that we saw on the retail side. The good news is we've already received September's sales tax. We got it on Friday, and September's sales tax was up 9% compared to the previous year. So it looks like we're going to end the year about $145,000 better than budget on sales tax. So that's definitely strong news. On the expense side for the month of August, there wasn't a lot going on, just the administrative fee that's paid to the city of $15,000, and then just the normal monthly debt service of the almost $93,000. So EIC ended the month of August with a cash balance of $3.9 million. And you can see on this cash flow forecast where we're projecting out, I've changed a little bit of the estimates on the revenue for that September estimate. I've put in what we already know about September. And I've also in September put in a payment for Olympic Drive. It looks like we'll have our first disbursement related to that project in September. They have a signed engineering contract there, and the city's already started paying on that engineering contract. Looking forward, it looks pretty similar to what you've seen before, where we're looking at a low point of $1.4 million in the second quarter of 2020 as far as our cash balance goes. Any questions on the cash flow statement before we move on? Okay, great. The next page is just actually the income statement for the month. We've pretty much covered it in the cash flow statement, so I'm not going to spend too much time there. And the third page just lists the projects that are currently open and shows the amount that EIC has committed, how much has been funded so far, and what the remaining funding is. It also shows us just our usual information on where EIC's money is invested, which we're still invested in the EIC tax pool account. Surprisingly, we're still earning 2.29% on that, so rates haven't fallen too much there. And then there's the sales tax analysis down below. Any questions? All right, well, I'll keep y'all up to date on what's going to go on with that refunding opportunity, but could be a little bit of a savings for EIC. So, all right,
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
All right. Under monthly reports is our projects update. Mr. Hoppy?
Good afternoon. I've got 9 projects that you all have passed over the last near term that are out there catalyzing activity in our community that I want to update you on today. River Trail Extension to Schreiner University. As you recall, the City Council did let that contract here about a month ago. So we have initiated the kickoff with the contractor, and we're already starting to see, if you've driven through Schreiner lately, they've laid out their internal walking trail along that path, and obviously we've laid out the path along the right-of-way section there along 27. So we're excited to have that moving here over the next 6 to 9 months, and hopefully we'll have that up and going and usable sometime before next summer. Aerial Pipe Bridge, reported to you last time that we were in the final steps of having the funding authorized through the Texas Water Development Board Disaster Recovery Funds. We did receive word for that just recently that we were awarded that $1 million grant. We have proceeded with the engineering contract to go ahead and look at putting that up onto the 534 bridge. Tennis center improvements, continue to make progress out there. If you've been by there lately, they've gone through and done quite a bit of the site work, quite a bit of the construction and the concrete section in between the 2 main court areas, and also going through and doing a lot of the refencing and underground electrical work. So progressing on that one. Aquatic feasibility study, still looking at some of the operational costs related to the phasing plan that the community, as they looked at different scenarios that they would like for us to potentially look at in the future, looking at how that operationally could lay out and those costs associated with that. Olympic Drive infrastructure extension and downtown streetscape, working on construction documents on both of those efforts, hoping to let contracts here in the next couple months. Legion lift stations progressing very nicely. We've gone through and gotten the top plate, so that's basically up to the full extension of to ground level on that project. Econo Lodge, Hobby Lobby, they're making really great progress out there, still anticipating being open in mid-October timeframe. And then Thompson's Spur 98 infrastructure extension, they have completed most of the off-site water line work extending from the water treatment plant over to James Road, beginning to work through their wastewater components. So, lots of good stuff going on out there. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Hey,
Yes, sir.
what's the status of construction on the Arcadia? When did they begin working on it?
Right, so they are working on construction documents right now. My understanding is that they are hoping to start the construction process in possibly the late October timeframe. Might push to November, but we'll be tracking with them pretty closely.
Thanks.
Any
Any
other
other
questions? All right.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you.
VA. Under monthly reports, item 3C, which is a monthly update from Kerr Economic Development Corporation. Gil? Walt? All right.
You.
We'll do it together, yeah.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Walt will be providing some additional information on some of the projects that we have. I want to spend time on just on one particular project that is really starting to kind of gain some traction here as of the last few weeks. It's a project that you might have heard here in the last month, a couple months. It's a project, the Sacred Cow. It is a project in the aerospace sector. It's a manufacturer of aviation components. They are a tier 1 supplier for OEMs and MROs. OEM is a original equipment manufacturer. MRO is a maintenance, repair, and operation. So basically, these are kind of like your assembly plants and what have you that are producing either new automobiles or new planes. And the reason I bring this up is because having a tier 1 supplier, any community for that matter, going after a tier 1 supplier, it's a big deal. Tier 1 suppliers, again, they supply solely to the MROs and OEMs, so they're usually working on the big components. Then you have your tier 2 suppliers, which, you know, the tier 1s will hire the tier 2s, so there's quite a few tier 2 suppliers. So they create or produce a part that goes into the component that the tier 1 is creating that will go into either an automobile or an aircraft. Then you have your tier 3 suppliers, and there's quite a few of those. Those are all over the place. And they usually will work on the smaller components that go into the tier 2s, tier 3s, so on and so forth. Then your tier 3 suppliers will, in turn, they're the ones that hire all of your local small businesses, a lot of your service-oriented businesses, logistics, and what have you. So, again, once you have a tier 1 supplier that you're working with, or at least is on the hook, the reason it's pretty special is because now you start talking about developing a cluster development. That's how you get started as far as creating that. And once you start bringing all these businesses in, because a tier 1 supplier is going to put a pressure on the tier 2 to start moving in closer to save costs, save on costs and what have you, as well as the tier 2s to the tier 3s. So now you start talking about the inputs and the outputs for this particular sector, which now again goes back to developing that cluster. So this particular company is looking at Kerrville, and this is by no accident. This is something where we've been very proactive in knocking on doors and recruiting and what have you. They are looking at a facility here in Kerrville. They need about 20,000 square foot of space. The project would be about 40 to 60 jobs, about $4 to $5 million in cap investment. The bulk of that would be in equipment. The employees that they would need, at least at the very beginning, are semi-skilled. So that puts us in a good position to start working with our school district, with our community colleges, and to a certain extent with the university for some semi-skilled labor. We did have an opportunity to visit this company last week, so I myself came back last week from meeting with them in the Midwest. And that's usually golden. Once you get the green light and you're asked, like, okay, you know, we've heard enough of Kerrville. Come and see what we have. So it's our part of going in and kind of like kicking the tires per se, trying to see what they have. Toured the plant. They have a very clean, very lean, Sigma lean operation. They've got 3 facilities, 500 employees total. I visited the actual headquarters. There's a lot of manual labor, which is good because that's a lot of jobs. A couple things that I did notice that I like. One is they do have a clean room. So when it comes to manufacturing, when you have a clean room operation, that typically means that your employees are touching high dollar, high value products. So again, that goes back into that supply chain. Now you start really increasing the skill set and the wealth in the area. And the other thing is that they did have, in addition to a lot of manual labor, assembly that's being required, they did have a couple of robotic machines, a couple of robot arms towards the back. And again, that dovetails into us trying to create that pipeline of skilled labor, which is high output. One of the things they said is they take pride in the fact that they have great benefits for their employees, which would be very good for our area, and they have a very low turnover rate. The result from us up there, one, knocking on doors, recruitment aspect, a little bit of marketing, getting in front of them, is we will be getting a site visit from them here in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So hopefully by the next board meeting, we'll be able to report on that. As far as the timeline for this particular project, again, it's starting to move pretty fast. They need to move into a 20,000 square foot footprint. They're looking at doing that in the spring. So even if we don't have a facility, we'll find something for them where they can temporarily set up shop to start training some of their employees. Some of their management will start moving into the area in the spring. Some of them are actually permanent. They've said, like, we'll go down to Texas. So once they come in, then they start hiring local people, and that's what I like. Now we start talking about them hiring Kerrville people for their operation to start training them and putting them through their corporate culture and what have you. They need to be in full production by September 2020, which is a year from now, which might sound like a long time from now, but in manufacturing, that's a pretty aggressive schedule. They're pretty assertive on that. And so we're kind of like, working with them right now, and you know what, that sometimes we operate best like that. Once we have a strict deadline, trying to get them what they need. So once we're up there and we're kind of like, they're hearing about Kerrville, what we have to offer, how we can start working their particular project, fostering the entry of their operation into our area. And by no means this is not a done deal. There's a lot of work that needs to go into it. They started talking about, well, we're going to start looking into a 100,000 square foot facility, which I was like, well, that's very different from the 20,000 square feet. And they said, well, depending on certain contracts, and they have, the beauty of this project is they're very diversified. They have federal contracts, private contracts, and then they also do some outsourcing work for refurbishing of certain components. So they're very diversified. Depending on certain contracts, they said within 3 years, 3, 4, 5, we might need that 100,000 square foot facility to grow, and then we're still talking about 150 to 200 employees. I'm like, okay, so let's start with what we have first. But again, once we're able to tie them in, now we start talking about how we're going to grow into that. So just some quick key points. Again, it's not a done deal at all. There is competition. They are either considering an expansion where they're at in the Midwest to accommodate their growth, or Texas would be their other option. We are the only community that they're looking at in Texas, which bodes well for us in the Office of the Governor. We have engaged with the Office of the Governor. They have met with the company already. They've done a one-on-one, and they've come back and said, okay, let us know what you need, and we'll start working to accommodate your needs. They have provided a letter, or at least a communicative of support for the company, saying, we're all in as far as supporting you coming into the Kerrville area. We've already met with the Texas Workforce Commissioner. He himself has already said, we want to work a project. We want to do something in Kerrville. So this dovetails nicely into what he's trying to do. And then internally, Walt, myself, Teresa there, the team that we have, we're looking at the different incentive scenarios internally as far as like, okay, this is what they need. However, we're cognizant of the parameters that we have to work with as far as working with this particular project. So whether it's the next meeting or 2 meetings from now, we are hopeful that we'll come back and look at having both a letter of support as well as some kind of an application for incentives should the START project moving forward. So I'll leave you with that. I'll leave you with just in a nutshell, it's an aerospace project, which in itself it's pretty exciting. And again, that's a sector that continues to grow into the future. our proximity into San Antonio, and again, coming back to that tier 1 status of these particular projects, puts us in a very good position. Whether it's this project or not, we know that, you know, we can get the attention of tier 1 suppliers. We've done a visit to their headquarters, which is huge in economic development. We are looking at a site visit here pretty soon, and they confirmed that today. And the Office of the Governor is engaged in this particular project to help us with it. That concludes my report, and I'll hand it over to Walt for the remaining items. Any questions on my part?
So we don't have a 20,000 square foot, they'd have to build something, is that correct?
We have something that kind of accommodates their needs. But outside of that, yes, we would have to be looking at a build-to-suit, and like I said, let's work with them with what we have first, and then we'll look at years 3, 4, and 5. Thank you.
Thanks, Gil.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to brief you all today on a very similar scope project, but one in a very different industry. You'll be briefed on this in executive session. The code name is Oasis. I've briefed it generally before. We've talked about it a great deal in the ESU board meetings, and we're continuing to make progress on this particular opportunity. It is in the manufacturing space. It's a construction manufacturing operation. Of particular interest is it's also a operation that we believe will draw heavily on local supply chains for components, giving secondary effects into our retail and wholesale materials markets here in Kerr County. And that's a very, very big benefit. We're looking at around 60 jobs, good benefits and higher than average wages. It is in the construction sector, and one that we are also working with the ISDs to develop some pipeline of good candidates who are interested in developing their skills in the trades and other areas which support this business. The operation has significant logistic advantage by locating in Kerr County, as their primary customer is in the Hill Country, and it's a very large and very challenging logistics laden transportation product. So we have a considerable advantage with respect to them locating the project here. We have identified a property that is suitable for their needs. Their interest is in establishing a rental relationship to begin with, so that they can begin to get their operation up and certified with an eventual aspiration to purchase that property. We continue to encourage discussions on both sides, from the lessor and the lessee standpoint, to get that initial deal closed so that they can begin that ramp-up process. I don't believe that there'll be large asks in terms of support for this project in the near term. In the longer term, there may be some modest requests for some support to do some utility, that is sewer and water hookups, to support some additional businesses that they're looking to co-locate on the same property. So we view this as a very strategic project in that it's the right shape, the right composition, providing secondary benefits to our local retail supply chains and the associated taxes associated with those transactions. And it's also supportive of an industrial skill set, which our community will leverage for many years to come. So we're very, very happy for this opportunity. The two opportunities together, again, represent similar size and scope, but very different markets and very different industries. And with that diversification, we're also very pleased. On a lighter note, my wife is still in Italy. She'll be meeting with the mayor of Orvieto Wednesday, and hopefully we can progress our marketing effort to promote our craft agriculture industry to the establishment of a sister city program with Orvieto, Italy. And that would be a huge push in that direction. So pending your questions, that concludes my brief.
Questions?
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Walt. All right, moving on to item number 4A, which is the Economic Development Grant Agreement between the Kerr Economic Development Corporation and the City of Kerrville, Texas Economic Improvement Corporation. To kind of back this up just a little bit and hopefully save a little bit of time, I don't believe the package from KEDC has changed. So we've seen and heard that presentation. so I didn't think you would be prepared to do that again, but you can certainly answer questions. So,
Any questions that occurred in the meantime, we're happy to answer.
very good. At last meeting, we did have a request of staff to change the terms of the agreement to include a 3-year expiration date instead of 1 and some other language. So that has been included in your package. So EA, would you, is it possible for you to kind of let us know what changes were made to that
Yeah, that's a great
agreement?
summary. Essentially, we did shift the agreement to a 3-year per the direction of the EIC at the last meeting. That is, of course, subject to annual appropriations through the budgetary process. So there's not much more to it than that.
Is the amount for each of the subsequent 2 years going to be the same?
That's the way it's been drafted at this point.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Obviously, that could, shift via a change to the agreement at a later date and a change to those subsequent budgets.
But we are not obligated for those 2 years. We have to, each year we have to approve.
Yes, sir. It has to be appropriated every year through the budgetary process.
There's a signaling intention there. We feel like we like to be doing. I mean, it's basically sending a signal, I guess, right?
Yes, sir. That was our understanding.
Right?
I have a question just about the reporting that's going to happen each month, and wanted to just get Walt and Gil to maybe weigh in on those 4 strategic areas that y'all identified in your business plan: the business retention and expansion, strategic development, talent development, and business recruitment. Is there a way on a monthly basis that we can kind of, I'd like to see 3 elements reported back to the EIC. One kind of being what efforts have y'all made in each one of those 4 categories? What do you kind of see coming in terms of, just like the presentation you guys made today about conversations that are in the works, and what have you actually secured?
We are more than happy to accommodate your requests or requirements for reporting in any way. I think that structure you suggested is economical and inclusive, and we'll be happy to structure our reports.
And I think that could be as simple as a written report, and then we can ask questions if we have them about it.
We're going in the same direction with our other funding sources. They want to see that kind of thing. So if we can, we'll come up with one standardized report and pass it around. I think that's both reasonable and actual.
So I would recommend that the metrics that you guys have established be somewhat included in that report as well.
Yeah.
So you could give us an update each month on the numbers in those
We're very much
items.
focused, so we're happy to do that.
Okay? Any other questions?
Any action required on this?
Yes, we need to vote to approve, and so that would, you guys kind of know how that works. We have a motion in a second.
I move that we approve this draft document that we have.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, raise your right hand. And that motion is approved unanimously. Moving on to item 4B, which is a presentation of an EIC funding request by the city of Kerrville, Texas, regarding improvements to the Kerrville Kerr County Airport at Lewis Schreiner Field.
Thank you. My name is Jim Manns, and I'm a member of the airport board and the lead director in charge of strategic planning. So I have a short presentation I'd like to make, and then we'll ask for approval of our requests. So first of all, economic development impact of our airport, and then a strategic planning process, then proposed projects, capital funds needed, and any discussion that you want to have. We have a study done by Texas Department of Transportation Aviation Division with regard to the economic impact of the airport, the Kerrville, Kerr County Airport. And that report, Mary has copies of it if you want to pass them out. Our airport has direct impact of 186 jobs and $13.9 million. When you add capital improvements to that, you add another 1.4 million, and the visitor impacts 5.5 million, and you multiply that by the velocity of money as it goes through the community, and you get another 17 million. So the total annual impact of this airport is $38.3 million. And I looked at that initially and I thought, wow, can that be right? I mean, even if it's wrong by 50%, it's a hell of a lot of impact. So, and it was done by by TxDOT, so it has some credibility. Anyhow, with regard to strategic planning, we had a strategic plan in our airport as a part of our master plan, but it's several years old, maybe 10 or 12 years old, quite honestly. So we decided about 12 months ago, it's time for us to develop a new revised strategic plan, particularly with the addition of our new airport manager and new board members. It was appropriate to do that. So we took about 12 months and finished up last June or July with this report, and the purpose of it was to develop guidelines for future directions and a roadmap, if you will. Process included data collection, and a copy of this report is available if any of you are interested in it. And we collected data regarding the airport as to volume of business done, how much gas has been pumped over the last 10 years, how many tenants do we have, how much, what our budgets have been, and all of that. So we collected that. Then we had internal stakeholder meetings. We met with representatives of the city. We met with representatives of the county. We met with representatives of Kerrville Aviation, our FBO operator. And then we did surveys of all of our customers, written surveys. Then we visited what we call our peer airports to try to learn what they're doing better than we are and what we can learn from them. And we visited, let's see, New Braunfels, Conroe, Fredericksburg, and McKinney. Then we did a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Our takeaways, highly summarized in our SWOT analysis, is our weaknesses are we have a limited amount of premier space being what we call Class A space, or space that's adjacent to the runway, where you can drive your car on one end of it and get in your airplane and get it on a runway from the other. And we have no clear path for capital development funding. And we think, actually, when we compare ourselves to our peer airports, our service levels are kind of average. Not bad, but not great. Opportunities we see is an increase in economic development, an increase in our outreach, as well as an increase in the number and quality of our services. We are of the view that we don't have a negative image at the airport. We just don't have much of an image at all. And we believe that that is, for the citizens of Kerr County and Kerrville, they need to understand better as to what an asset is out there at the airport. So we have over the past 5 years, you can see operating results. And if you can look at the orange line, which is our expenses, you'll see that they're almost flat and have been flat for several years, whereas our revenues have increased. And the increase in the revenues is primarily related to revenue from leases, which is our main income source. And part of that is the Mooney lease, which occurred in the early years, and then the Brinkman hangar, which came back to the airport and we were able to lease. So that we are now, as of our last year, which would have been 2018 in September, we are to a slight surplus. So main drivers, revenues, leases, and we have limited ability to increase those revenues, and we really need to generate more operating revenues to fund deferred maintenance and for our strategic plan initiatives. As you see, our expenses have been level, but it costs more to do business these days. So what we've done is through good management, we have tried to keep our expenses level, but I personally believe there are some items there that have been deferred that we need to catch up on in terms of the appearance of the airport. Nothing related to any problems with safety, but items that we need to address. So our economic strategic initiatives, Our strategic initiative is that which we want to focus on in the 5-year period of our strategic plan, 2019 to 2023. And we got to run an airport, but these are items we want to focus on specifically and try to improve. One is emphasis on economic development. Second is improving our service levels, promotion of our airport, and marketing of our brand, and actively address airport improvements, infrastructure, and financing. In that regard, we want to increase the number of hangars for lease. We have a project on board of 10 new T-hangars. T-hangars, of course, are the smaller hangars, a single airplane hangar, typically piston airplanes. And we have on the drawing board 10 new hangars. We have a waiting list of 30. We want to increase the amount of premier space, what we call Class A space. What did I do? And develop access to financing infrastructure and substantially improve the appearance of our airport. Mary, do you want to cover this part? Yeah. Okay.
Ask questions anytime you want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Push that button, not that other one, it goes away.
This one? Hello, my name is Mary Rohr. I'm the airport manager, and I've been working with our airport board here for a year and a couple of months and doing a lot of work on understanding what we have and we don't have at the airport, and I've learned a whole lot. So one of the things that we started doing was starting to identify development areas, big kind of chunks of land that we have around the airport that are currently don't have buildings on them that are available for development. So I'm going to say I've got 2 of the areas circled, and the areas are area number 4 and area number 5, and those are the 2 areas I'll talk about today. If you're familiar with the area of the airport, the terminal building itself is between area number 2 and area number 3. So that's where our gate 3 is if you come into our terminal building. And the area over by area number 5 is the Mooney complex. So the Mooney complex is just south of area number 5. So to kind of give you some ideas, and north is to the top of the page. Oops, now I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so one of the things that Jim just talked about was we have a project to build some box hangars up on Q. We'll be meeting with TxDOT in a couple days to start working on kicking off a project that's for 10 T-hangars, and we've received, we get a grant from TxDOT, and then about to receive contributions from both the city and the county to be able to build those 10 T-hangars. So as we were working through the design development of the T-hangars, it made sense while we had a lot of large construction equipment on the site to go ahead and do some site grading work and some utility extension work to allow us to have the ability to have some, what we kind of call shovel ready. We'll have some pads available for future development of what we call box hangars, which are for the larger aircraft. So this was sort of like leveraging the existing construction contract that we have to plan to be able to then, while the equipment is on site and the folks are there and the utilities are being done, to allow us to have room for funding to be able to do the site work. And this would be for 3 box hangars, which are basically used for corporate jets, as well as they're actually in a pretty visible part of the airport, and that would actually could be for businesses. So if someone that wanted to have a business, it would be very easily accessible for their customers to come and use those box hangars. So the EIC contribution for their share of that work would be $100,000.
County would be matching.
And the county matches the funds, so the city's contribution through the EIC would be $100,000, and the county has included $100,000 in their budget right now for that share of the work.
Do you have demand for 3 of these hangars, or is it just anticipating it?
We're anticipating demand, but we've gotten lots of interest in the box hangars. I think the box hangars are probably more. We've got folks waiting for the T-hangars because they know they're coming, but I'm sure once we get the word out that we're going to be having some shovel-ready pad areas for box hangars, we'll start working on developing that.
Mary, you may also want to talk about the jobs component related to box hangars
Yeah.
and T-hangars.
So the T-hangars, which are kind of in the blue area, basically are individual people like myself or Don or these guys here that are sitting next to me that have private planes, and we basically fit, one plane into a T hangar. This would be a box hangar which could be used for an avionics shop, or maybe someone that has a business that would have some relativeness needing to have support aircraft as well. So it could be a job component. It also could just be jet components, that they could be a flight group or somebody, a corporate company that would have a plane that might have pilots as well as logistics folks there as well. So it's a good bonus to be able to have, and also someone could also rent or build a hangar to be able to store more planes within it as well. So it's a little bit more flexible in use than a T hangar.
The type of airplanes that would be in the box hangars possibly could be added to the tax space, whereas the individual airplanes are kind of like your personal automobile, that they're not taxed. But if it's a corporation doing business, then those airplanes would be in the tax space. So there's some benefits you can sell to the public as far as putting money towards one of these type projects. We didn't ask for money for the T hangars. TxDOT supports that because those are more individual, not job creating, not really helping the tax base.
Do you have any job potentials for these box hangars? Currently, any companies that are inquiring about space in the box
We
hangar?
have lost 2 opportunities, economic development, because we did not have any kind of
You're
available
talking aviation-related businesses,
aviation-related, yes.
because it was not ready, they could
Because
not,
we lost out because you didn't have the facilities.
To move
now
into.
That's always the chicken and the egg deal. I mean,
I know.
do you build it and then
They will come.
market it, or do you wait till they come and hope that you can push them off long enough till you get the project completed? It's a lot easier to sell a car that's on the lot than one that's 150 miles away, So that's I know that's difficult for, or at least the city has indicated that we'd rather have someone in hand that's willing to write checks and have jobs and all of that, but the experience of most of the peer airports is that when they build them, they're full. So
We got turned towards the box hangars based on the peer airports Mary and I visited, and none of them want to build T hangars anymore. They want independent people to build the T hangars, and the airports are more interested in building bigger hangars, and that's what we'd like to try to.
the other thing is the market. If you look at the market of how many airplanes, how many Cessna airplanes are being built, or how many Bonanzas are being built, it's going like this. The number of turbine powered engines, or the larger aircraft, larger private aircraft, that's where all the production is. So that's the future, and that's the reason we're taking a hard look at box hangars.
well, but you have to make a choice whether or not you're gonna hold that space for a potential business client, or if you put a jet in there or a turbine in there, that space is harder to get them out of once they have that space, and the space becomes, a airport garage, basically.
It would be a trick to have the people that are leasing space for aircraft to relocate their aircraft temporarily while we use that space for a business and build another one. But that might be easier to do than not having any at all. Do you see what I'm?
I do, I follow you.
So
I think we probably bring in new people with box hangars for big airplanes, because most of the folks that are on the T hangar waiting list are guys like ourselves that already live here, that are already contributing to the economy. And the box hangars possibly will bring in a company. So there's other things intangible that will bring benefits to the community, rather than just having somebody renting space.
Yeah, your strategy has got to be clear what you want to do, and, with 30 planes 30 people waiting on the waiting list, these T hangars seem to go pretty fast, no matter where you are, everywhere.
But the other thing that was unique, and we found out in our strategic planning process, is we have a community here that has a lot of people with a lot of money in ranches and folks all around the area that have generated a lot of jobs and a lot of economic activity, and they would not be here if it wouldn't be for that airport. And so how do we then work with them and talking out loudly, because we really haven't discussed this, but that could be a real driver of some sort if we can figure out a way how to hook into some of their.
Partner up with them.
Partner up, yeah, somehow, I don't know, but, and that's longer range, but, that's on our radar.
But this request is not to build a box hangar.
This request is not to build the box hangars. This is just to leverage the contractors on site that are building the T hangars to help with the grading out there so it's visible, that someone can drive out, see it, see a flat pad that they can build on it. Our sites out, our airport, even though we drive up and down Highway 27 and go by it, and us pilots land on very flat runways, it's got a lot of topo. It has got a lot of topo. So, you know, that yellow box is basically, you know, got a 4 or 5% slope across it. So you bring it to a person that wants to build a box hangar, and he's gonna look at it and go, whoa. And that's what we're trying to do, is knock it down to make it shovel ready. In other words, visible, easy to see, easy to understand, easy to see how they're gonna get to the taxiway and how they're gonna get to the runway.
With the objective of shortening this time frame between, okay, I'd like to put a business in Kerrville, and I've got 50 employees, but I need a place, and it has to be on the airport or near the airport, to shorten that time frame so we have a little less resistance, if you follow me. So building a pad where you got all that stuff done, then it becomes just putting some cement and putting up the structure, as opposed to going through all the engineering and all the rest of it.
Any plans to move the fuel farm?
No, no, sir.
We may do some changing of the way the road comes in and done, and possibly have another access to runway 321 going out top there. Like Mary said, there's a lot of topography over there.
Oh, yeah.
I think that airport's flat.
I know where it is.
It's not. So, but there's alternate means of financing. In other words, we could say next year we're coming to you to ask you for money to build the box hangars. Well, maybe we will, but maybe we won't. Maybe somebody says, oh, I see that pad right there, and that would work real good. I'll build one. So fine, we'll lease you the land. So it helps with the development.
Mr. President, I hate to interrupt. I'm getting messages from folks watching the filming of this. They can't hear, so if we can ask everyone to come to the mic. The mics are in the ceiling right there, so if we can if you're going to speak, if you'll come to the podium.
All right. The second project that we're requesting funds for is what we call the building, which is called the Horseshoe Building. And I think a few of you came and did the tour, the airport tour we had this spring. But it is a building that Mooney Aircraft had, and then they gave it back to us. And it's a little bit in disarray, but we recognize that it's got some, the area that's outlined in green actually has got some kind of good bones or good skeleton. And the areas that are on either side of it, we kind of call it the horseshoe, the areas where the X's are, those would be demoed. So in other words, our request would be to kind of clean it up and again, make it look a whole lot more presentable than it currently is right now for a larger unit. Now this building itself is about 8,000 feet. So what we would do is remove the two buildings on the top and the bottom of the blue area and then renovate the green building. So in other words, we'd be working on cleaning out all the interior improvements, removing all the, it's got some old metal sheds around it and things like that, and then be able to have it look a whole lot better now because it just looks like an abandoned building, and reduce the liability of what we have out there. And then also the last piece would be to make some improvements, the longer blue line, make some improvements to access to the runway. So in other words, regrade and put some culverts in so that there's direct access to the runway. So that one is really just is number one, removing a liability that currently is on the field because it's basically an abandoned building, and working on making something kind of good out of some things that we already have there on the field. So again, that would include the demo. I got the demo. The high roof works really well, and keep the slab's already in place, the plumbing and the utilities are already in place, and basically working on providing access to a good access to the runway system that we currently have.
You're going to you're going to regrade that approach apron.
Yeah, yes.
And that's quite a bit of work there.
Yeah,
Because there's a big ditch in there.
There is a big ditch. So that is our phase one funding that we're requesting, and what staff suggested to us is come back with a phase 2 once we have a user or an owner that would want to work on this space, to then be able to come back in and then enclose the green area with, sheet metal building, a metal building enclosure around it, then with a large hangar door that would then support the aircraft. So we have in our budget a big aircraft door, a big aircraft hangar door. I think it's a 70-foot wide by 20-foot high door to support large aircraft that would come in there. So they would be able to come in and allow to either store one plane and have some offices around the edges, or multiple planes, or maybe even have a flight service department there. So that would be for really true for job creation, for corporate use, or a business use. Maybe someone that wants to do an avionics shop, then they have a place to store their planes inside as well, and have offices or any type of services that would service aircraft, upholstery, things like that. It would be what that would be for. So ours is a 2-phase request. Number 1 would be the $150,000. Your share, again, the county is contributing $150,000 as well. So $300,000 to basically clean up the whole area and get it looking good, and then additional funds in the future when we have a user in hand to know what type of configuration they would want for that 8,000 square foot building.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay.
Questions?
Just one comment. Sounds like you guys and KEDC need to get together to game plan who you're going to go find to occupy these buildings.
We talk on a very regular basis.
Awesome.
In fact, yeah, they're our number one favorite folks to talk to these days.
So this is our summary.
Tied for number
I'm sorry.
There's a lot of number ones.
So this is our summary of our request is the $100,000 for your share of the site infrastructures to promote the 3 box hangars. And then the second piece is the horseshoe area. So phase 1 would be your share, $150,000 to get the site cleaned up and the building cleaned up to look better. And then a future phase 2, once a tenant user is identified, to be able to then enclose the shell, so to speak, and put up whatever exterior walls and hangar door for what they need to be able to look at. And again, guidance was, let's not do a whole lot of work that we'd have to redo again. Let's wait until we know who our user is and be a little bit more cautious before we spend that next tranche of money.
Very
Any
good.
comments? Any questions?
All right, this is slated to for executive session, so I think we probably would want to have some conversation there. So no need to have any conversation at this time with a motion. All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Definitely. Thank you.
Moving on to item 4C, which is a presentation of an EIFC funding request by 2J Page Development LLC regarding workforce housing development located along Meadowview Road. This project package was in your agenda package that you received. EA?
Yes, I'll just briefly introduce this item. This is a workforce housing and attainable housing project that we have been working with Mr. Travis Page on for a number of months now. The project has gone through some degree of history with some different investment groups. Happy to report that the most recent partner making the 2J Page partnership did purchase the property in mid-July, and so we felt comfortable bringing this project to you for further presentation and direction on how you'd like to proceed. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce the 2J Page team.
Hi, I'm Joe Byers. I'm the managing partner of 2J Capital and its related entities. And so my presentation today is going to start off with just introducing the board to us and what we are doing and what our plans are. And proud to say that we're proud owners of Kerrville Hill Country property. And so we want to make the best possible use out of the 10 acres. And so how does this work?
Just forward and back on those arrows right there.
The one arrow, the one that doesn't have the arrow in it.
Oh, the one that doesn't? Okay. So as I mentioned, today's presentation, we just want to talk about who we are, what we're doing, and so you guys can get a better understanding of our business model. And then we want to talk about 2J Page Development, which would be the entity that we'll transfer the deed into, and that would be the holding company for the development. And from there, we'll have a contract construction agreement with Travis Page, who's a local residential developer, home builder. To talk a little bit about our structure, how we're ownership held, the Streetscape Family Trust is one of our primary investors in all of our entities. Lone Oak Investments is a single-purpose LLC that owns workforce rental properties in the San Antonio area. 2J Capital, we develop new workforce housing in northern Comal County. We're licensed by the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, the Manufacturing Housing Department, and we own land for future development, including the 10 acres here in Kerrville. And so 2J Page Development is an entity that we set up specifically for the Kerrville project, the Meeker project. This is a list of our current real estate assets. Just so you understand, Jeff and I, we've been friends for over 15 years, and at the end of a large asset management contract that was responsible for troubled assets, part of successful asset management is selling off your assets for profits. And so towards the end of 2016, beginning 2017, we're talking about how we can create a business together. And our passion is really helping people get into affordable homes, and specifically new homes. Jeff was involved in some flipping with some properties in Corpus and near Canyon Lake, and so we knew that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to create opportunities for the average person to be able to afford and buy homes. And so you can see we've developed a rather impressive portfolio of property in a very short time. And so it's 10 properties, and with a net worth of about $1.7 million, with only about $500,000 in debt. So we're relatively conservative with our debt. And so it's just gives you a snapshot of what we're doing and how we've been doing it. This is our RBI license. Like I said, we're licensed with the state of Texas, and what this license empowers us to do is actually have our own manufactured home retail operation, like you see in different parts, especially in your Braunfels off of 35. You got Clayton, Palm Harbor, and Cavco homes. That license allows us to operate in that capacity, but we choose not to do that just because of the capital infusion it requires and the labor. But we're one of 900 people in the state of Texas that has this license. When you compare it to the 120,000 real estate brokers and salespeople in Texas, it kind of does set us apart. And we're required to be bonded by the state of Texas, and so that's just a copy of our bonding certificate. Here are two properties that were one of our first properties to develop. These are manufactured homes, and the first property we just sold in May. And then the second property at the bottom is the one we're under contract. We're supposed to close October 1st. So these are great entry-level properties. They're 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,568 square feet, each on half-acre lots. And so just beautiful properties in a great neighborhood. And to give you an example, what was across the street is this property. I like to hold ourselves out that we bought the ugliest property in Comal County, which we did. And it took me 4 hours to negotiate directly with the seller to buy that property, but I had to buy it for a number of reasons. Number one, is across the street from other two properties. And then I wanted to show the community that we're responsible owners and developers, and that we're going to take care of the community to enhance that particular neighborhood. And so that's the before, and 4 months later, we have this. And so very proud of that. I can't tell you the amount of neighbors that came by and shook our hands, and that would still call off our sign, and even had Comal County Deputy Sheriff stop one day and say thank you for helping clean up the neighborhood, especially that property had some problems at one time. These are the workforce house rental properties. These properties are located in the Randolph Air Force Base area, and we rent exclusively to military personnel. And so this just gives you an example of, again, our passion for workforce communities. And that's the only 2-story house in our portfolio. It's the largest property with the least amount of rent and the most headaches. This is our Jewel property. We purchased this property last year. It's 46 acres on the Guadalupe River in the ETJ of Seguin. And so our plan on this particular property is a hand-drawing schematic there, but our idea is to develop about 13 custom homes that will have, some properties will have river frontage, then about 42 to 48 workforce-type housing that will have access to the Guadalupe River. And if we do that, we're going to be the only developer that I know of in South Texas that has workforce housing with access to the river directly. So that's our project for way on down the road because our focus is here in Kerrville. Okay, 2J Page Development. This is a new entity we formed specifically for the Kerrville project. It's going to consist of approximately 35 houses. That's what we have on the drawing board now, but we may have less because we got some topography issues that Travis will be able to address. The average house is going to be between 1,100 and 1,500 square feet. We're real fond of between 1,200 and 1,300 square feet. We've got some great single story floor plans to show you. Our consultants had advised us that the highest and best use for this infill site would be for single family because all around the adjacent properties that abut our property and then other properties in the Meeker Road area are all single story homes with single carports. So we want to keep the neighborhood similar. And so that's the reason we're going with single family, single story type homes. And also, it's a great marketing strategy for first-time home buyers in the millennial demographic that is our target profile. Here's some floor plans here, and I'll ask Travis to come up here in a second, but this is a typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,250 square foot house. Our target price is $200,000, which mathematically comes out to a sales price of $160 a square foot, which is supported by current comparable sales. Here's another floor plan. This is one of my favorites. I like the large hill country front porch and easy flow into the house, the one on the left, as well as the floor plan on the right. So this is indicative to what's there in the community already. And so we're just going to replicate what's already there and make some beautiful workforce housing. And so the question is, are these properties affordable? Well, in the last GO meeting, we were talking about the average salaries of some of the new jobs that are coming online with some of the larger employers that you have. And so Chase has a great affordability calculator, not to pull for Chase, but you just put in your monthly income, your basically monthly expenses that show up on your credit report. That doesn't include your light bill or your cell phone bill. It's just your car loans, student loans, and some credit card debt. And then you put in what your down payment is. And so we believe we can, financing for this, our workforce housing project here in Kerrville will be primarily FHA, which they have a 3.5% down payment program. In fact, that's how we're selling our second house right now, is through the FHA 3.5% down program. And so VA also has 100% financing for their veterans that have a 580 or greater credit score. And then also, I'm very familiar with the USDA direct lending program. They actually have 100% financing, as well as they offer subsidized financing for folks that can't afford the current mortgage payment, but they believe they're in a profession or an occupation where their salaries will increase over time. It's a great program. A whole lot of people don't know about it, but the USDA rep has discussed this program in depth with me several times. And plus, the amortization, that's 40, it's actually 38 years, and so you can stretch to 40 in order to get someone to qualify for the subsidized program. So great financing opportunities there. And with that, we'll have Travis come up.
Thank you, sir.
Just that button.
All right. Good afternoon. First off, I want to thank EA and Walt for kind of helping me get to this point. I mean, like I said, I have been kind of coming into their office for almost a year. Really started when we moved to Kerrville 3.5 years ago. My wife and I looking for a home, and her family's from here, Margie and Gary Jaton. So we literally moved in with the in-laws for 6 months, trying to find something on the market, and there was just nothing. And especially in this price range, which is really what we wanted to get into for our first home. We had 2 newborn twins, and we just didn't have anything. And when we found something, we found an 1,100 square foot rental property for $1,500 a month. And we wanted new construction, especially with the kids and stuff like that. That's how we felt. So really, I was introduced to this property by a representative of 4 premier properties. And it really is in that area to kind of first be able to start doing something like this. Now, I started building homes when I was 20 years old. I started early when I was with Meritage Homes. I was the youngest in the company. I quickly transitioned into KB, where I was running 3 neighborhoods at one time, up to 60 homes all over Austin. And that's where I kind of transferred into the Kerrville area. So I've been looking at doing something like this for quite some time. And the Meeker property is kind of a good location to start at something like this, because you do have those areas around it. The homes look similar. Now, we are going to come in, they're going to be fully energy efficient, and I'll break down some of the options that are going to be in them. I've given them packages of some of the homes I've built in the past couple years in Fair Oaks for a company called Ashton Woods. That neighborhood, I was running the entire neighborhood, really ranges from $350 to $550, and we're using the exact same finishes outside of masonry. So granite countertops, wood tile flooring, very high efficiency plumbing lines, bibs insulation, and so forth. So just a little bit of background about that. Like I said, something that we have been kind of looking for a while, and I was introduced with these guys this year, and we're kind of just putting everything together. That was not the one.
Oops. There you go.
The one, not the arrow. Okay. So the Meeker property, 10.1 acres. This is what it looks like right now if you go to the city and pull up the plat. There are already 14 pre-platted lots for a development that was looked at a few years ago that never went anywhere. So there is an existing street, Beach Street on the top right, that dead ends, but you can see that they have already tied in a section going to the left and then connecting back to Poplar at the top. Nothing exists there right now, but those streets have already been platted. They're already in the sewer capacity numbers and everything for that area. So how we're proposing this is that is essentially kind of our phase 1, to where we're going to amend that plat to add more lots to give us that 18 for phase 1. So this is what it looks like right now. The outline in bold are existing homes on Poplar and Beach, but we do already have pre-platted lots with the sewer numbers ready to go.
So
Go ahead.
you can leave it right there.
Here we go. Oh.
I know that the corner of Beach and Poplar
Yes, sir.
is an old site. That used to be the office for Habitat when I first moved to Kerrville.
Okay.
So that means that 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3 are already, there are already houses there, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So is it the bold line?
That's where it
And then
outlines.
it goes all the way up to Poplar, or are these houses on Poplar as well?
So-
I'm lost in where the
So the
property
first,
line is.
I think it's 10 from the top left.
Okay.
Those are all houses that front Poplar.
Okay.
The section to the right that you're talking about are homes that front Beach. And within that bold
Then
outline.
it's vacant, 11, 12, 13, 14,
Correct.
9, 10,
Those
11,
are
12.
vacant,
Okay.
but this is literally they're already platted.
And
on
so
there.
the property line then goes back up to Poplar
Correct.
until it gets to the Habitat house I referenced, and it comes back down.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Is that a platted street in between that lot 14, block 9 and
It
the
is.
9? It is a platted street?
It is a
there?
platted street.
Just not built?
Nothing exists.
Gotcha.
Correct.
So this 10.175 acres includes all of that would need
Correct.
to be, okay.
Yeah, and therefore it really helps us expedite the process of getting the approval through the city. I've been meeting with Drew Paxton often, going through this. I've had our engineer come meet, talk to him about what's there and what's not. So really it kind of helps us expedite the approval process, getting through the first preliminary plats.
Have y'all drafted a plat?
No, we have not. That's where we're at right now. And as you can see, we're in Kerrville. There's some topography. So that's why we're going to have a little over 10 acres, but we can only put in 35. They're 5,000 square foot lots, pretty identical to what's in that section already. But again, we got to do our best to build around the topography. So what we have come up with, and this is with Malone and Wheeler's, an engineering firm out of San Antonio that we are working with, is the light black lines that you can see into the phase 1 on the bottom right. And then that diagonal road at the top left of that picture is actually Meeker Street. to where we have some black lines of phase 2 future properties that are going to be fronted off of Meeker.
Is there any plan to develop or to improve that common area space or
In between? You know, we're talking about the ideas of maybe doing some walking trails and stuff like that. I mean, it's a gorgeous area. It's just really difficult to put anything down there just with the topography the way it is. There's a lot of different options. I've talked to, the city about giving it to them for their parks and stuff like that. And we want to give it a community feel, but that separation obviously just kind of makes it a little tricky for us. So we do want to, we're keeping every tree we can. I know there's no tree ordinance here. I'm from Austin, where you basically get a sentence if you cut a tree down. So we want to keep it Kerrville. That's why we're not doing, they talked about us doing replatting 45-foot lots, stuff like that, to be able to try to squeeze more in there. But we really do want to keep it as Kerrville as possible with some yards and space like that. Now, we are going to have privacy fences separating everything. Obviously, in that area, all you have is chain link, and it's a little bit more, older. Everything here is going to be brand new, and it's going to look like it. They're just going to be to a smaller scale. What you're looking at here is a bid for a phase 1 infrastructure cost. This is how it's going to be outlined when we do go through the final platting engineering to give to the city. Pretty detailed. And again, this is part of the funding request that we are asking for reimbursement for phase 1. And then you have the phase 2 with the smaller infrastructure just being at that one street off of Meeker. Phase 2 is essentially those 2 streets kind of connecting everything back around.
Cul-de-sac street?
From Poplar.
There's a cul-de-sac? Yeah.
Cul-de-sac is off Meeker, yes, sir.
Yeah. This is that phase there.
Yes, sir. Now, some of the infrastructure timeline, again, this goes back with what I've been talking to Drew about. We are able to expedite it again because we're really just amending that phase 1. So we're not starting from scratch. We're using the same numbers that they had on their lots, the street size, everything else that they've already platted. We're just amending it to adjust for more lots. And again, this is kind of our timeline that we're guaranteeing 30 days from our construction process, everything else like that. That way we can start clearing and grading and getting the process started. We really want to be able to get these new homes started Q1 of next year. Our timeline is March. Now, all the homes are going to be on 90-day cycle times. We are looking at building 4 of them at a time from start to finish as a worst case. Now, again, that's testing the market. So if they sell as fast as they're probably going to, we're able to expedite that to a more aggressive timeline. But that gives us with the first set of homes essentially open and ready in June, ready for move-in. Now, again, I want everybody to be proud of this in Kerrville. So obviously I want the chamber there, ribbon cutting, everything. I'm going to market it from day one, from slab, that energy. I'm going to do energy tutorials and stuff like that with the insulation that we're using and some of the energy finals, all the way up to final. It's an aggressive timeline, but in order to keep the contractors that I'm wanting to do, they want it aggressive. And that helps us keep that price point at the way it is. Now, unfortunately, I am having to reach out of Kerrville to get some subcontractors just because of all the local guys that I've talked to either are not able to keep up or priced out of it just because of the volume that they're used to doing. So, yeah, and I've knocked on a lot of doors. And I'm using some here, local AC companies, going through their energy stuff here as much as I can because I want this to be everything about Kerrville. But that is the timeline we're looking at. 4 is worst case, but like I said, it's probably going to get it much more aggressive than that. Now, if we do 4 at a time, going through phase 1, phase 2, 35, we are estimated to be completely done in Q3 of 2022. Again, that's worst case. Now, phase 1, like I said, is the first 18. The infrastructure from our guys are going to be 8 weeks. 4 starts at a time, like I talked about. That 90-day cycle time is that sweet spot I'm trying to hit. Obviously, working in the harsher months of the winter and stuff like that, we have allocated for extra days with a 15-month construction completion for phase 1 entirely. Phase 2, 17, 6 weeks for that street off of Meeker with the cul-de-sac. Again, 4 starts at a time, 90 to 110, 15-month completion for that one as well. This is just kind of overall plat of some of the setbacks that we're going to be looking at. Some of the standard features and what they're going to be including. Obviously, this is not all the features, but some of the stuff that I did want to just point out. Obviously, I wanted to point out privacy fence because something in that area does not exist. We are going to have some masonry. So we'll have a little bit more masonry than the Habitat homes or other homes in that area next door. We will have energy efficient bibs installation. We will go through all the process to get them energy efficient with blower door finals on every single home. Double glazed ply gem vinyl windows. Like I said, granite countertops in all of the bathrooms and kitchen. No cultured marble, no laminate tops, nothing like that. Wood look tile flooring or tile flooring in general. We are looking at doing wood plank as well. Just kind of playing to see what happens with all the tariffs from China, because that product is about to get very expensive. Elongated toilets, all the bathrooms, borate treatment, pest control at frame with all the homes. I'm going to do our third-party energy inspections through Quality Inspection Services. Full sods on the entire lot, Bermuda front and back, landscape package in the front, single-car carports with a single-car driveway pulling up to kind of keep it to what is in that area, just brand new. And just in general, some of the options that I have put pictures of. The secondary bathrooms are going to have the wall panel tub units. We are mostly going to do probably the whites and grays color schemes. I mean, that's obviously the style now, and everybody loves it. That's just showing the Tahoe styled cabinet doors that we are going to be using. 5-panel doors, all 6/8 doors throughout the home, brushed nickel finishes along with ORB. They are going to be completely built as inventory homes. We will not have a select design studio for people to go in there and make changes. So this is not one of those communities that say we're starting at 200 and then go up to 240 with certain options. It is going to start and stay at that price point. We are going to be designing them all, no changes, inventory products. And then some other products as far as the color finishes, carpets in the bedrooms, some granite selections, and some of the tile flooring options. And that concludes, and then I'll let Joe.
Well, just to elaborate a little bit on the timeline. So if we're successful in selling these homes pre-construction, we're very well capitalized. We're not bringing on any debt to do this, because debt, we find out, takes a slow process. And so we're real nimble. We're very easy to get along with. In fact, the decision makers are sitting right here. And so we're not a big company where we have multi-levels of decision trees. You're talking to the guys right here in front of you. So if we pre-sell 4 houses, then there's no reasons for us not to start construction on another 4. And so it really depends on how the market accepts these homes. We think that we're going to be selling out quickly, because there's a need for this price point home in the community. So, but I just want to let the panel know that we're very flexible on this, and we're asking for a reimbursement program. And EA and I kind of discussed how that would look like, and so we can do it on a quarterly basis as we close and sell homes. That there'd be a reimbursement for our infrastructure cost. From an accounting perspective, we'll have one account set up here locally for just our infrastructure account. So we'll have segregated funds just for infrastructure, and another account for our construction and operations. And so we're also going to hire our local CPA here in Kerrville to manage those accounts for us. And so I'm sure from a reporting standpoint that you guys would be happy having a local CPA. But this little diagram here, this chart, it's just some simple fun math that I did just to kind of show you what the average in-place sales price would be utilizing the different floor plans we have. And it's just an average of the 4 different floor plans. And so it's going to create about $7 million in additional ad valorem tax revenue once the project stabilizes. And so using today's tax rate and the assessed value calculation, tax revenue as a property stabilizes, and this doesn't include increase in the tax rate or increase in assessed value, it shows that it'd be about a 25% return on the 4B investment. So the payout on a conservative basis would be just at 4 years. And so that's just some simple fun math that I thought I would put out there. I don't know if it's really pertinent to this, but it's a great demonstration how we're able to create tax revenue based upon the stabilized development. So do y'all have any questions?
Questions, anyone?
Not me.
No questions.
Oh, well, that's great. Then we did a good job presentation-wise.
Thank you very much. So this item is also slated for executive session, so we will continue that conversation there. All right. Moving on, and thank you very much for your presentation. Moving on to item 4D, which is a resolution creating a subcommittee of EIC to review the bylaws of the corporation. This was on the agenda last month, and I know that Kent was probably the one that made the recommendation to move forward with that, and so there was a little bit of discussion about that and thought that we would revisit this when Kent was here. So Kent is here.
Okay.
So the first thing is it necessary for us to go through the bylaws? Many of us read that, didn't find a whole lot that we felt like was significant to change. Do you feel like we need to continue that process, or?
I don't. I think that some issues came up, but I don't think that changing the bylaws is necessarily the way to handle them. If there was anything about disbursement of the monies or whatever, I think that could be handled and maybe in the agreement with the city. And I think the bylaws are fine.
Okay. So how do we?
We don't have to do anything, do we?
Just let it fall, or?
Yeah, if it's the decision of the body not to move forward with any bylaw review, then I think we just move on to the next item.
Very good. And no vote or anything needed. Okay. Very good. So,
just a discussion thing, and after we looked at it and talked it over, it's fine.
all right. Moving on to item 4E, which is review and discuss the upcoming EIC regular meeting dates. So I suppose there may be some building closures that fall on these dates, or?
Yes, we had, the body, as we were coming up with appointments in May and June timeframe, had asked us, based off of holiday and travel planning schedules, to get out in advance of this group. Just to let you know, we usually have conflicts that occur in the January, February dates related to Martin Luther King Day and President's Day that fall also on the third Mondays in those months. And so wanted to certainly get those in front of you. There's also a conflict next March related to spring break, if that's a conflict for you all. And then did want to talk about an October date. Mr. McDaniel and myself will both be at a training opportunity on the 16th. And so if we have an opportunity to push that to the 28th, that could also give us some time and potentially in negotiating some funding agreements, if that's the direction of the body, given you've got two agreements on the table tonight. So.
Okay, October is slated for the 21st, so you leave on the 16th, you won't be back for the 21st, is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. And so item number 1 would be to move to the 28th.
I'm in favor of that.
I'm out of town.
No problem.
I'm traveling.
Yep.
But
You're out?
I'm out.
No problem.
No problem.
All right.
Okay.
So we can move that one to the 28th,
Okay.
November 18th.
Yep.
We good for that date? Here?
Yes, sir.
So that one does not need to be moved.
That's correct.
And then December?
I think we're good on December right now. I think that falls on the week prior to the Christmas holiday. So
16th.
We're
16th.
good on that front if you all are.
Okay.
Okay.
16th then.
In January? Anything there?
January, we do have a conflict with Martin Luther King Day on January 20th.
Okay.
So our suggestion would be either to move that forward to the 13th, the 14th, or pushing it back to the 27th.
13th is good.
13th's good for me.
Fine.
No problem.
No problem.
All right. And do we need to look at go ahead and look at February, or are we good through
It's up to
January?
y'all. I know you guys set travel dates out pretty far, so that's totally y'all's call on February and March, or we can revisit this here in a couple months if you.
Will y'all take off President's Day?
City Hall will be open. I just know that there have been conflicts in the past with different folks' travel schedules.
Oh. Looks good to me.
Yeah, I'm fine on 17th.
I'm fine on 17th.
Me too.
Same.
Me too.
Okay, very good. We'll keep that one on the 17th.
All right, can you get us all an email with those new dates in there so we can change our
Certainly will do
calendars?
that. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
That's far we need to go.
So then the March one, was
You
that?
want to look at March too?
Well, it's on the list here is all I,
Okay.
I mean, I'm good with any of those days, doesn't matter to me.
Anybody have a conflict, March
It's
16th?
too far out.
Yeah, well, we can deal with it later.
We can get back to you guys. And,
Very good.
okay, very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll need a motion to move into executive session. Do we need to mention the two items since they're already on the agenda?
No, just
The language.
Okay,
I make a motion, we go into executive session under the qualification of section 551, which one?
.071,
071?
551.087.
551087.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. It is 5:26. We are now moving into executive session. All right. We're coming out of executive session at 6:04. No action was taken in executive session. We do have two motions to make. Can I get the first?
Yes, sir. Regarding item 4B, I would move that we direct staff to develop a funding agreement with the city of Kerrville regarding improvements to the Kerrville Kerr County Airport and to set a public hearing for October the 28th.
So we have the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. And that motion carries unanimously. And then the second motion?
What, Aaron?
I'll move that we direct staff to create a term sheet and bring us the information that we requested in the executive session regarding item 4C, the funding request for 2J Page Development LLC.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor, signal with raising your right hand. That motion carries unanimously. All right. Any items for future agendas? Any announcements further? All right, we are adjourned. It is 6:05.
That was quick.